So, number one, all three of those ideas look very, very different. And number two, they're all probably wrong. But what we rejoice about is that we can now start speculating about this question. Okay, limits to our arrogance. So this was a required element in my series. There aren't any philosophers here, are there? I was promised that, because I'm now going to go in territory I don't belong in. Or how far can cosmology go? So in 1999, our provost, the lawyer, who I had to teach about dark energy, asked me to write an essay for the year 2000. And he liked my title, Limits to Our Arrogance. And so the arrogance had to do with cosmologists. Why are they arrogant? Because they think they can actually understand the universe. And the first part of it was sort of fluff, saying if we didn't have that arrogance, we wouldn't have tried and we wouldn't have gone so far. And then it speculated, went on to speculate on, are there limits to that? You know, so are we eventually going to run out of steam? Is there only so much we can know? And so let me finish up by talking about that. So what are the limits to what we can learn about the universe? Now there's one that's been discussed a lot, and I've discussed it here. And it's an interesting limit. It's sort of the one that we can quantify the best. And if you remember, throughout I've been talking about the observable universe. And the simplest way to think about it is the universe is only 13.7 billion years old, and so light has only had time to get to us from a finite bit of the universe. And so we can't see the rest. Now that's certainly a limitation, because everybody wants to know how big the universe is it infinite? And I can't answer that. I'm not sure, I put the Hubble extremely deep field here. I'm not sure that this is a fundamental limitation, because it looks like we've seen a fair sample of the universe. So we everywhere we look sort of looks the same. I talked about the homogeneity, what did I call it? More of the same. So if we've seen a fair sample, then this may not be a real limitation, but we should keep it in mind. And we should keep it in mind when we think about inflation. So inflation took a really ugly universe and blew up a patch of it and made it smooth. Okay. Another problem, and this I think sort of came up yesterday, but this is really what the essay was about, was what I call the inflationary veil. So the purpose of inflation was to make the present state of our universe insensitive to the initial state, because we thought we'd never know that, and make everything we see today sort of automatic. And the metaphor I used for that was the helium. So we don't have to start the universe with 25% helium, because it gets made in the Big Bang. So the good side of this, I told you about the beauty of inflation. It smooths the universe, puts little ripples on it, creates the heat, so on and so forth. But the bad side of it is it then puts a veil, or a wall, or a curtain, maybe I should have said the inflationary curtain, it's probably more like a curtain than a veil, between us and how the universe began, and before the Big Bang. And so, you know, be careful what you wish for. Okay, what's the next one? Theories that aren't testable but might even be true. So, what if our universe really is a multiverse and we can't test that idea? So that would be a tragic way for cosmology to end, for many reasons. And you can imagine, I mean, it could well be that we someday, today, I don't think we can test the multiverse even in principle. It could be someday we could, but imagine that the multiverse is as simple as people think it is and we can't even test it. So that would be a limit to our knowledge, and it would be very frustrating. the vastness of the universe. So I want to, one thought that I want to come back to again is the universe is really big. And it's often beyond the reach of our instruments and our ideas. And so is this a limitation? I think in principle, yes, but I think it leads, that's why cosmology is boom and bust. So I actually have a little diagram for you here. The boom periods and the bust periods. So the 1920s were a boom right after the microwave background. The 1980s, then things slowed down. Right now we're in a boom period. And then, the 1990s, since I was around, we'll just call it a recession rather than a bust. And so it is boom or bust science, I think because of this, that the universe is very vast, and we're standing on our tippy toes with our instruments and our ideas to understand it. And however, so I think this largely leads to boom or bust. However, eventually we will reach fundamental limits of our instruments. I don't think we have yet, but you can, for example, in building gravity wave detectors, they worry about the fundamental limits that come from quantum mechanics that limit the sensitivities of their detectors. And someday our instruments, of course you get around these fundamental limits because you put a fundamental limit to an instrument that looks like this, and then a clever experimenter dreams up a whole new instrument that evades that. But eventually there will be, we will be limited by that. I already showed you that. And then there are some very interesting questions that are beyond the reach of science. Let's see. One of them is, why is there something rather than nothing? And a good friend, let's see. Yeah, where does space, time, and the laws of physics come from? So there may be questions that science can't address. Now, I wanted to show you this book, which is, I think it's a really good read, and it's written by my friend Lawrence Krauss, but I think it's very wrong-headed. But it is a good read, and actually I mentioned a lot in it, so you should, it'll make me feel good if you read it. But it illustrates the following point, and let's see, he's got a foreword, an after foreword by Richard Dawkins. So science is the most powerful means that we've ever found of exploring the physical world. That's all it is. And I like to tell students that the way I think of physics is that we're playing a game. We're trying to figure out, we're like little kids watching a chess game trying to figure out the rules. And once we figure out all the rules, we want to ask, why does a knight move that way? And I said earlier, we don't do why. And science is not going to answer why the laws of physics are the way they are. So what this book argues, and what Richard Dawkins loves to argue, and what Stephen Hawking loves to argue, is that science can prove there is no God. And so this book claims that, we can start with nothing and you get a universe. Of course, he secretly posits the laws of physics, so where did those come from? And so there are questions that we're eventually that we're already asking, why is there something rather than nothing? And I would claim, and maybe I'm wrong, that science cannot answer that question. Because as far as I know, we could not tell the difference. There's no way we could test whether our universe was created by a God, whatever that means, or it was a freshman physics experiment in a very advanced civilization where, they just had to try a bunch of laws of physics. In fact, try SU3 cross SU2 cross U1, that's really goofy, let's see what happens. So we just can't tell the difference. And because science doesn't do questions like that. And I think this is, if I were a philosopher, and I love talking to my friend Elaine Pagels. I don't know if any of you read Elaine Pagels, who's very, who agrees that this is a silly book. I think there is an interesting dialogue between science and religion that Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss is a very good writer, don't participate in. Because if you look at the two most important intellectual forces during the last 2,000 years, it would be religion and science. And science has been on the rise. And anyway, it's an interesting conversation. And to have the conversation, we have to agree on the rules. And I think sometimes the physicists, the scientists get a little bold and say, yeah, we can explain everything and we can prove that there isn't a God, and we can't even explain, and we won't be able to explain where the laws of physics came from. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll get proven wrong, and that would be very, very interesting. So there are some interesting questions about the universe that I believe are beyond the realm of science, and that's a fundamental limitation to what we can know about the universe. So after all that doom and gloom, I thought I ought to put this picture in. I am bullish on cosmology. So this is a great adventure that we are in, and this is a great time to be either a cosmologist or a spectator. And one of the themes that I just want to repeat again are these deep connections, unexpected, between the very small and the very big, quarks and the cosmos. And it's kind of fitting that these two fields began 400 years ago with the invention of the telescope and the microscope. And it's not just the quark soup, but hopefully you come away with the idea that our universe was shaped by events that took place during its earliest moments, when the microscopic laws of physics were really important. And if that doesn't do it for you, the dark matter and dark energy. And the flip side of this is that the universe is now a heavenly lab to explore the microverse. So the string theorists love us. I mean, look at Brian Greene. He's not a cosmologist. He's a string theorist. We didn't ever even give him a license. And he's talking about cosmology. If you ask Brian, why are you interested in cosmology? It's because it might test the ideas of string theory. So those are deep connections. And today, telescopes and accelerators are working together. So cosmologists are really interested in what's going on at the big accelerators and vice versa. So my daughter's art. So my daughter's really smart. And she's even smarter today than when we talked about this. So I was telling her, this is kind of how I think about cosmology. This is why I think it's so exciting. We know a lot, we understand less. And the big thing is to put together the picture. So I explained to her, we've got inflation, hot Big Bang, string cosmology, all the things that we've talked about. Boy, we've talked about a lot of things here. And so I said, Rachel, can you put these together? That's really the challenge. And this is like a special time. I mean, you feel like you have all the pieces on the table, or most of them. Probably you don't have all of them. There's a missing piece, so it makes it even more interesting. So I asked Rachel, what do you have? What is that? Can you help me out here? And she said, Daddy, you have an elephant. Now, of course, you realize okay, you know what I did here. But this is a metaphor, or a simile. No, I think it's a metaphor. I don't know what it is. Anyway, it's like the 6 blind men and the elephant. Isn't that a tale from, right. And there they are, they're blind, they're feeling the elephant, and they each report back some different feature. And I feel like that's where we are in cosmology today. So we know a lot, we understand less, we're trying to put it together. Do we have an elephant? What do we have? What's the coherent picture of all of this? And it's an amazing journey. It's amazing where we are right now. I mean, it's just awe-inspiring, and it's really fun. And I wish I were one of the students here, because it's even going to get more fun. Thank you very much for coming.